Hello, my name is Leland Joshua Bernard, and this is my final project for Advanced Web Applications of Spring of 2019 as taught by Professor Syed. For my project, I added some PHP functionality in the way of a login, logout, and sign up screen to my existing project simulation station from last semester's Web Applications class. And what this functionality allows for is a user could come to the sign up screen and they can enter in a username, an email, a password, and then repeat the password to verify that they're the same. And it can then create a user profile for them. Now suppose I leave username blank and put in an email address. And fill in everything else. When I click sign up, it gives an error message indicating that there was an empty field in the user ID. And it says test@email.com, indicating that that was the last field that was valid. Username was what was left open. Similarly, if I were to put in test, and then say I make the password test, but then for the repeat password I write pest with a P. When I go to sign up, it will suggest that the password check UI, the test mail and test Gmail weren't correct. So it'll give an error on the password check. Unfortunately, one of the technical issues I've come across is getting this forbidden you don't have permission to access message. I'm not sure why it does this. It's one of the technical challenges I just did not have time to figure out due to time constraints. But what will occur, and I will show that now, is that if we go ahead and do a proper entry, we'll get a success message, even though it says it gives this forbidden message. And what we can see from that is if I go into phpMyAdmin, it'll show the database for this project, and the project database is login system. And then here under users, we can now see that test was entered. So it's now a valid user. So what I can do with that is I can come back here, and similar to the sign up page, if I don't have anything entered, I'll get an empty fields error message. If I put in a username that doesn't exist, like again, we'll go with pest, and try to log in, I'll get a no user message, meaning that there's no user by that username or email or password. And if I put it in correctly, test, and click login, then I get a success message. And then from there, if I click log out, I get a logout success message. And these are the files for the PHP that were involved in this. Right here is some HTML I've added for the buttons for the login, logout, and the sign up link. Here is some PHP for the sign up action, so that when the sign up link is followed, it comes to this page. And this is the code for accepting the form for the different inputs from the user. And here is a PHP page specifically that is called from here signup.inc.php, and this page contains the code for basically the equivalents of the UID, the mail, the password repeat. These become variables, and this is all of the error checking for the login, or rather, sorry, for the sign-in screen when they're trying to register. And I included password hashing and using the default hashing method. And then assuming that they enter everything okay, they receive a sign up success message. So these are all of the different error checking. Logout.inc.php is much more simple. Basically starts a session, then unsets the session, then destroys any session variables that were created during the session, and then gives the logout equals success message. And this is the login PHP that contains the functionality associated with the login button. And basically it puts the variables for mail UID and password right here based on mail UID and PWD. And it will give the different error checking messages for empty fields, SQL error should that happen, wrong password error, and then login success or no user. And then this is basically the database handler PHP, and this is what the page uses to have the login information to get to the local host and to know which database I'm using, which is login system. And then it converts the values that it grabs from the database, or rather the values entered in from the database, to server name, DB username, DB password, DB name. And it is programmed to give a connection failure error if it fails to connect, as well as create a connection variable. And that is the essence of my project. I did indeed find that this project was a lot more technically demanding than simply making Simulation Station last semester. In dealing with MAMP and the database, I encountered several technical challenges. There was an issue where MySQL server wouldn't turn on, even though Apache would, so it took me quite some time to figure out how to work around that. Then for a little while, there was an issue where I was getting an error code 500, and it turned out that it was just because there was a syntax error in my PHP, and that took some time to run down. And as was witnessed earlier, there's that error 404 forbidden where it's getting rejected. I'm not sure why that's the case, because it seems to communicate with the database because it will put the user in. But unfortunately, due to time constraints, I just didn't have enough time to try and get those entirely hammered out. If I should work on this again in the future, some of the ideas that I have for ways that it could be expanded upon would be to perhaps add a web page that users can go to once they are logged in, that can kind of give a summary of their account profile. And then also replacing, if it'll sit still for me for a second, also replacing the discus comments with a PHP-driven comment section that is based on the user's login information instead of a discus login would be something I would like to add if I find myself able to work on this again in the future, or should I come back to it in my own time. But that is my project in a nutshell. Thank you for your time.